Have you ever had that feeling quiet, almost imperceptible at first, that something is missing, but you can't quite name what it is? You wake up, go through the motions, respond to messages, smile at the right moments, but deep inside, there's a void. Not chaos, not breakdown, just nothing. A stillness so strange it feels heavier than pain itself. A silence that isn't peaceful but suffocating. You try to push it away. You stay busy. You talk to people. You scroll. You work. You plan your next trip or goal or project. But it lingers, that persistent ache in the background of your life. Like your soul is whispering something you can't quite hear. And maybe you've asked yourself, quietly at night or in the middle of a crowded room, what's wrong with me? Why does everything feel so distant, like you're living through a fog you can't escape? Why does joy feel muted and connection feel performative? What if I told you nothing is wrong with you? What if I told you that this sense of being lost is not a mistake but a signal? What if you're not being abandoned by life, but summoned? What if, instead of falling apart, you're falling into place, into a version of yourself you haven't yet met? Carl Jung once said that the most important problems in life can never be solved. They must be outgrown. So maybe this isn't a puzzle for you to fix. Maybe this is a transition your soul is quietly orchestrating behind the scenes. One that the world around you can't see, but you feel with every breath. You don't need another motivational quote. You don't need to be told to snap out of it, or be grateful, or stay positive. Because deep down, you know this is bigger than mood or mindset. This is existential. This is the pause before the shift. This is your soul preparing the ground for something you can't name yet but will one day look back on as the moment everything started to change. So stay with me. Because in the next few minutes, I won't give you a quick fix, but I will give you something more important. A mirror. A mirror that might just help you see that this feeling of being lost is not a detour. It's the beginning. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." At first glance, this might sound dramatic, perhaps even exaggerated, but look closer, and you'll see its terrifying truth reflected everywhere. In our distractions, in our compulsive need to stay busy, in the way we fill silence with noise and avoid solitude like it's a threat. And why? Because when the world goes quiet, the soul begins to speak, and most of us are not ready to listen. The feeling of being lost is one of the most misunderstood experiences in the human condition. Society often treats it as failure. Friends offer concerned looks. Self-help gurus offer solutions. You're told to take action, make plans, get your life together. But what if that sense of being lost isn't a sign that you're broken, but a sign that something deeper is waking up? What if it's not the end of the path, but the moment you step off the path laid out by others and onto the one that truly belongs to you? Jung believed that every person carries within them both a conscious self and a shadow self. The conscious self is the identity we present to the world, our roles, our achievements, our preferences. The shadow is everything we've suppressed, denied, or ignored about ourselves, our fears, our unmet desires, our unresolved pain. And when these two aspects of the psyche remain disconnected, life becomes fragmented. But when they start moving toward integration, when the unconscious pushes forward to be seen, something remarkable begins. And that moment of integration, that journey of becoming whole, is what Jung called individuation. Individuation is not self-improvement. It is not about fixing your flaws or becoming better. It is about becoming whole. And the path to wholeness is not paved with clarity. It is paved with confusion, with doubt, with the disorienting feeling that the ground beneath you is shifting. Because it is. What you once believed about yourself no longer holds. The roles you've played no longer fit. The things you used to chase no longer inspire you. And that's exactly how transformation begins, not with certainty, but with a slow unraveling. Every spiritual tradition has understood this in its own way. Before he became the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama walked away from everything: his palace, his title, his comforto, sit in silence beneath a tree. Jesus wandered the desert for 40 days and 40 nights, confronting his temptations alone. Jung himself withdrew from the world after a profound personal crisis, documenting his inner journey in what he would later call the Red Book, a work he never published in his lifetime because he feared it was too radical to be understood. These moments of isolation, of feeling utterly unmoored, are not meaningless. They are thresholds, and like all thresholds, they demand that something die before something new can be born. Not a physical death, but a death of identity, of illusion, of who you thought you had to be. So when you feel lost, when the structures of your life begin to dissolve, when nothing seems to make sense anymore, ask yourself, what is trying to emerge through the chaos? What part of you has been silent for too long, waiting for the noise to subside? Because maybe, just maybe, what you're calling being lost is your soul finally interrupting your performance. Maybe it's your truth knocking on the door you've kept locked for years. Maybe it's the old self quietly falling away so the real one can take its place. And no, this journey is not linear. It won't come with a clear map. There are no 10 steps to finding yourself. In fact, the very idea of finding yourself is misleading. You're not something lost in the woods. You are something becoming. The path of individuation is not glamorous. It often begins in a kind of darkness. You lose interest in things that used to excite you. Relationships begin to feel distant. Your career might lose meaning. The things you once relied on for identity, success, recognition, even love no longer offer the same comfort. And for a while, you might feel like you're falling. But that fall isn't a collapse. It's a return to what is essential. A stripping away of the false, the borrowed, the conditioned. And this is where most people turn back. Because the discomfort becomes unbearable. Because the ego doesn't want to die. It wants to maintain control. It whispers, get back to normal. But what if normal was the very thing that was keeping you numb? Jung taught that the unconscious has its own intelligence, and that when life begins to feel like a breakdown, it's often because the soul is trying to break through. Through the masks, through the roles, through the lies you've had to live in order to be loved, accepted, or simply survive. So let me ask you again, if you feel lost right now, what if that is not a problem to be solved, but a gift to be unwrapped slowly, with reverence? Because feeling lost is not the same as being lost. Maybe you are exactly where you need to be. Maybe your soul is doing what the mind cannot, guiding you back to yourself. And if that's true, then the real question is not, how do I fix this? The real question is, am I willing to listen? There's a moment in every transformation where the world seems to turn its back on you. Conversations grow distant. The places you once found comfort now feel empty. Even your own reflection feels like it belongs to someone you no longer fully recognize. It is in this strange silence where the outside world fades that something else begins to stir within you. A quiet, almost imperceptible shift. Not loud, not dramatic, but undeniable. What if you're not being abandoned? What if you're being prepared? Imagine a tree in winter, stripped of all its color, standing still beneath a gray sky. To an untrained eye, it looks lifeless. But beneath the surface, roots are deepening. The tree is not dying. It's preparing. Every cell inside it is quietly reconfiguring, storing energy, knowing without a doubt that spring will come. And maybe you are in your own winter right now. Maybe you look at your life and see everything that's no longer blooming, and you think you've lost your way. But what if this stillness, this withdrawal, this craving to be alone, is not regression but sacred preparation? Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The moments when you feel most disconnected from the world are often the moments your inner world is waking up. Not as punishment, but as invitation. The soul never truly sleeps. It waits, patiently, until your mind quiets enough to hear it. And when it begins to stir, it doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It moves in symbols, in subtle impulses, in unexpected dreams. You start to feel things differently. You notice what drains your energy. You feel drawn to silence, to long walks without music, to evenings without noise. You begin to crave depth, not in conversation alone, but in everything. This is not a phase, it's a threshold. What you feel is your intuition being called to the surface. Not the loud voice of fear, but the deeper pull of something ancient and true. It speaks in sensations, in knowing, in a kind of clarity that doesn't come from logic but from the marrow of your being. It's no coincidence that, during this stage, many people report vivid dreams, dreams that feel more like messages than fantasies. Symbols appear: water, fire, old houses, hidden doors, forgotten faces. They're not random. They're the language of the unconscious trying to reintroduce you to yourself. And perhaps for the first time, you begin to understand why you felt so alone. Because this part of the journey cannot be walked with others. This is the sacred retreat, a space between what you were and what you are becoming. In spiritual traditions, this is known as liminal space, a space of in-between. Neither here nor there, neither lost nor yet found. And in that space, many people panic. They run back to old versions of themselves, to familiar pain, to shallow connections, simply because they cannot tolerate the uncertainty of becoming. But the ones who stay, who sit in the discomfort, who surrender to the quiet, they are the ones who awaken. Because when you no longer distract yourself, when you no longer run from solitude, something begins to rise from the depths, a new center of gravity. One not based on identity or performance or how others see you, but on something far more enduring: presence. This presence isn't something you perform, it's something you return to. It has always been there, buried beneath conditioning and survival, but now it's ready to lead. And so you find yourself in a strange dance. Part of you wants to go back because back is familiar, but another part of you knows there's no real path backward. You're not who you used to be, even if you can't yet explain who you're becoming. That tension, that sacred discomfort is the sign. It means your old skin no longer fits. And just like a snake must shed what it's outgrown, you too must release everything that was built on fear, performance, or avoidance. This is not a self-improvement process. This is initiation into a deeper way of being. And it is here, in this mysterious middle space, that the soul becomes active. It recalibrates your compass. It shows you what was never truly aligned, the job you forced yourself into, the relationship you stayed in out of fear, the mask you wore to be loved. None of it can come with you now, because you are being prepared for a life that honors who you really are. Not the edited version, not the people pleaser, not the performer, but the one who stands in truth, even when no one claps. The one who knows that peace is not found in the crowd, but in your own clarity. The one who chooses alignment over approval. So if you feel like your world is shrinking, if people are fading away, if the noise is falling silent, know that this is not abandonment. It's refinement. You're not losing your life. You're being returned to it. Slowly, precisely, divinely. But only if you have the courage to stay present through the unraveling. Because the soul cannot force itself upon you. It only prepares, quietly, lovingly, waiting for you to notice that the discomfort is not chaos, it's construction. You are being rebuilt from the inside out. And if you let it happen, if you trust this process even when your mind screams for certainty, you will wake up one day and feel it. The same world, but everything is different. Not because the world changed, but because you did. And suddenly, the stillness makes sense. The waiting had meaning. The solitude was sacred. Because now, you know, you were never lost. You were just being found. This is the part no one talks about. The part that doesn't look beautiful on camera. That can't be filtered into an inspirational quote. This is the stage of the journey where the light disappears completely, and the only thing left is you naked, raw, unguarded, face to face, with everything you've spent a lifetime trying to avoid. It doesn't feel like healing. It feels like breaking. This is the stage of shadow work. Carl Jung defined the shadow as the parts of ourselves we deny, suppress, reject, or disown. Not because they are inherently evil, but because at some point in our development, we were taught that they were unacceptable. The anger, the envy, the grief, the shame, the craving for validation, the urge to be seen, the impulse to control. We buried them. We built masks. We learned how to be liked. But the soul does not care about being liked. It cares about being whole. And so when the unconscious begins to surface, when the soul begins to press up against the walls of the persona, what rises isn't always light. It's the dark, the wounded, the wild, the messy, the parts of you that have been whispering from the basement of your being, begging to be heard. You might start to feel rage with no target. You might feel abandoned even when no one left. You might cry without knowing why. You might feel exhausted, afraid, disconnected. This is not depression. This is excavation. You are not falling apart. You are falling in. And yet, this is the stage where most people retreat, not because they're weak, but because they were never taught how to sit with discomfort, never shown how to stay present when the self is dissolving, never told that this darkness is not the end but the rite of passage. Because to be reborn, you must first descend. The descent is brutal. It strips away illusions. It rips off the stories you've told about yourself. It holds a mirror so close that you can no longer look away. And what you see might terrify you. The parts of you that manipulate to feel safe, the parts that hide behind perfection, the child still aching for approval, the adult still afraid of being alone. None of this makes you bad. It makes you human. And this inner reckoning is the hardest work of all. Because no one claps for you here. There are no metrics, no achievements, no applause, just silence, and a long, slow, burning truth. That everything you were taught to be is not all you are. You will want to run. You will want to go back to the relationship, the habit, the distraction, the job, the version of yourself that fit in better. You'll convince yourself that this is too much, too heavy, too unknown. And if you do go back, the pain might subside temporarily, but the soul remembers. And it will bring you back here again, and again, and again until you stay. Because there is something waiting for you in the dark, something ancient, something holy, something you cannot meet until you have let go of what is false. It is yourself, unedited. The shadow, once integrated, does not disappear. It becomes strength, clarity, boundaries, power, compassion. You no longer fear what you know. And when you know yourself deeply, especially the parts you used to be ashamed of, no one else can use them against you. But to get there, you must endure the chaos. You must look your pain in the eye and say, I see you. I won't run. You must stop asking what's wrong with you and start asking what your pain is trying to show you. Because pain is a messenger. It comes when you are ready to hear the truth that your life, as it was, no longer fits who you are becoming. The truth that your longing is not a curse, but a compass. The truth that you cannot be whole if you are still hiding. There will be nights when you beg for answers and hear nothing. Days when you feel lost in your own skin. Moments when you think you've gone mad. That's how it's supposed to feel. You are not broken. You are in process. Think of a caterpillar. Before it becomes a butterfly, it dissolves. Inside the cocoon, it is no longer what it was, and not yet what it will be. It is formless, suspended, confused. That is exactly what this stage is. The soul deconstructing what no longer serves. You are not meant to understand everything right now. You are meant to endure, to breathe, to feel, to trust that this unraveling has meaning, even when meaning feels out of reach. And when you do, something miraculous happens. One morning, the heaviness will lift slightly. You will notice light hitting the wall in a new way. A sound will stir a feeling you haven't felt in years. You will catch yourself laughing authentically. You will begin to remember your essence. And from that essence, a new life will emerge. One that wasn't built by fear. One that wasn't chosen to please others. One that belongs to you because you claimed it in the dark. But you must pass through the fire. Not around it. Not over it. Through it. And this, right here, is the hardest part. If you can survive this, if you can hold your breath while everything you've outgrown falls away, you will become unshakable. Not because you avoided the pain, but because you met it head on and made it your teacher. So stay. Stay in the unknown a little longer. Stay with your discomfort until it teaches you what comfort never could. Because the darkness you're in is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your becoming. There comes a moment, often so quiet you almost miss it, when the chaos settles. Not because everything outside has changed, but because something within you has. The fear that once echoed like thunder softens. The ache that once pressed on your chest begins to release. And for the first time in what feels like forever, you can breathe without bracing. This is the beginning of awakening, not the loud kind, not the kind that demands attention or praise, but the kind that hums beneath the surface. A subtle knowing, a quiet arrival, a sense that, somehow, even in the absence of clarity, you are finally home. You realize you were never falling apart. You were being reassembled. Not into who you used to be, but into who you were always meant to become. Every breakdown was a breakthrough in disguise. Every silence, a recalibration. Every loss, a doorway. The feeling of being lost wasn't a failure. It was the threshold, the sacred pause before emergence, the cocoon before the wings. And now, you begin to see it, the patterns that no longer repeat, the reactions that no longer own you, the love you no longer beg for, the worth you no longer question. You are not who you were, and you wouldn't want to be. This is not the end of the journey, but it is a return to yourself. Not the self shaped by others, but the self formed in the fire, in the silence, in the dark. You carry it now, this stillness, this strength, this softness. It lives in your breath, your gaze, your presence. Not loud, not forceful, but undeniable. Because once you've awakened, there is no going back. You have touched something real. And from that place, everything begins again, differently, divinely, authentically. You are not lost. You are found. If you've walked through the darkness and felt like this video spoke directly to something deep inside you, leave a single dot or a short sentence about what made you strong. I'll know you've been there. And others who are still finding their way will know they're not alone. Don't forget to subscribe, because here, you're not just watching a video, you're coming back to yourself.